Apparently, like, there was this story that was reported that Donald Trump was actually considering or eyeing Nikki Haley as his running mate. So it actually started with this account here. It said, "Scoop: Nikki Haley is under active consideration by Donald Trump's campaign to be his running mate. Two people familiar with the dynamic told Axios." I believe that's how you pronounce it, Axios. So before we get into the story, I just want to go ahead and say, wait a minute. When I first heard this headline, I said to myself, like, there's no way that this can be true, because obviously Nikki Haley made it very clear she's not interested earlier on when she was still running her own campaign and when she decided to, resign from her campaign. And also Donald Trump said that he wasn't interested. He wasn't interested in Nikki Haley. So I saw this headline and I'm like, what? Where does this come from all of a sudden? And you'll see, actually, if you look at the bottom of this, that Community Notes actually did debunk this. But so did Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. So we're going to get into this because I do want to clear this up. It says that Trump denies report claiming Nikki Haley is under consideration for the VP role. Then he goes on to say, "I wish her well." So let's get into this here. Again, I'm not sure where this information came from, but I honestly, again, the headline to me was suspect. Former President Trump dismissed a report Saturday that claimed he and his campaign were considering former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, his former GOP presidential primary opponent, to serve as his running mate in the 2024 presidential election. So he goes on to say that Nikki Haley is not under consideration for the VP slot, but I wish her well. Apparently, he wrote this statement on Truth Social. So the problem is now, if you click on that article from Axios, now they have issued a retraction. So I'm not really sure. They go on to say that they got this information from two people that are familiar with the two, but they don't tell you who those two people were. So I don't know where they actually got that information from, but it goes on to say Trump's post came after a report from Axios citing two people familiar with the dynamic claimed that Haley was in the running to be Trump's nominee for vice president. So to me, that did not make any sense whatsoever. No sense whatsoever. Haley launched her presidential campaign in February of 2023, becoming the first major candidate to challenge Trump, who announced his candidacy 3 months earlier. And she was a final rival to Trump, battling the former president in a two-candidate showdown from the New Hampshire primary in late January to Super Tuesday in early March. And you'll see a picture of them here. So we want to go ahead and clear the air here. Apparently, Donald Trump is saying he is not considering Nikki Haley as a potential running mate. To me, it just wouldn't have made any sense anyway, because if we go back to the GOP primary, we'll have to remind ourselves that Nikki Haley, her support was coming from people that were not a part of the Republican Party. Remember when we went through the different states and we looked at all of those, a lot of the people that were voting for her were not Republican voters. She did receive a lot of support from independents, right? But it doesn't make any sense that he would consider someone that is not a part of the Republican base. To me, that just not make any sense. That could be a surefire way for him to lose, but I guess if he's trying to win, he would not do that. And so it's also interesting too, because Nikki Haley also is debunking this claim. Let's go ahead and bring in that clip here from MSNBC.
Donald Trump likes to appear confident. Here are his recent comments about winning over voters who supported Nikki Haley in the primary.
All of those people are going to come to me because first of all, what's their choice? Biden, he's the worst president in the history of our country. There's never been a president so bad. So he's incompetent. So they're all coming to me. We see it already. They're all coming to me.
Okay, fact check, though. Haley might be coming back to haunt Trump. NBC News has confirmed a Wall Street Journal report that she's been meeting with donors and has no current plans to endorse Donald Trump. And we've seen what has happened in key primary states where Haley was on the ballot even after she dropped out. Just this week, Nikki Haley won more than 20% of the vote in Indiana. So it's clear that Trump will need these Haley voters to win in November. So joining me now is Basil Smikle, Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, and former Republican Congressman Carlos. Well, you're still a Republican? Are you, Carlos? Oh, a former Florida congressman, though, from Florida, Carlos Curbelo. Carlos and Basil, thank you so much for being here. Carlos, I'm going to start with you. Trump needs his voters, right? He's the presumptive GOP nominee. It'll probably be a fait accompli, right? So what happens with somebody like Nikki Haley? Does she just then stand silent, like once he becomes the actual GOP nominee?
Well, Nikki Haley has no plans, and the reporting is there, but I also have confirmation from people who are involved in her finance team that she has no plans to get behind Trump, at least not anytime soon. And then, Katie, you mentioned these voters, 20%.
That's wild.
The primary is over. Yeah. Haley is no longer a candidate, and people are going through the trouble of showing up to vote against Donald Trump. That is a problem for him.
Okay, but there's quickly. There's a difference between saying I'm not going to endorse Donald Trump and I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump, right? I mean, what are you hearing about that, though?
Well, I mean, sure, there's some nuance there, but if she doesn't endorse him, I mean, that's what counts, right? Whoever she decides to vote for, I mean, we may or may not even find out. But if she was a candidate for president and isn't supporting the nominee and is still getting 20% of the vote, that's meaningful. That makes a difference. That could cost him the election. We know how close these elections have been, right?
Yeah. And
I disagree with that. And I'm just going to tell you guys why. And you'll see this when we get to the rally that just happened. By the way, this rally is trending because it's insane and it's a blue state. So I disagree with that. Yes, Nikki Haley was able to capture like 20% in Indiana. So this was just recently. However, that being said, I keep telling you the swing states are the states that are going to determine who wins this presidential election. So they don't consider Indiana a swing state anymore. So just the reality is like, okay, that happened, but that isn't going to necessarily tank Trump's chances. And in fact, if I were these commentators, I would actually be paying attention to some of these blue states where Donald Trump is going to, and he's actually receiving a significant turnout at these rallies. They should be really concerned about that. That's what I would be focusing on. But I think this is being done because I feel like mainstream media is still trying to make Nikki Haley a thing. Because why else would they come out with this article, the Axios article? Why else would they report that Donald Trump is eyeing Nikki Haley? And both parties are saying that is not the case. She's saying here she has absolutely no plans to get behind Donald Trump. She's not going to endorse him. But if Nikki Haley is like a lot of voters that we have in this country, she's probably still going to go ahead and vote for the eventual nominee, which I think we all know Donald Trump is nominee for the Republican Party. If she's one of those voters that backs her party regardless, she doesn't have to actually physically endorse him. But when she goes to the polls, she may still vote for Donald Trump. It may just be that thing. Maybe she just doesn't want to publicly come out and endorse him. And I can understand that. But the reality is Nikki Haley is in a state, red state, South Carolina, that is going to go to Donald Trump. It's just the reality of the situation.
Basil, to that point from Carlos, right? The Biden and the Trump campaigns are clearly trying to woo these Haley voters. That number when we heard Indiana was jaw-dropping to me, frankly. So who do you think's doing a better job of it so far, though? I mean, is that 20% that we just heard about? Is that really just such a far-off dream for somebody like Joe Biden?
Well, I think Carlos is right in that 20% is important because these are voters that were intentional about making a point to say that they did not want to support Donald Trump. And I do think that this is where the Biden money advantage becomes really important. It is not fait accompli that these voters will then go out and vote for Joe Biden. He has to go get those votes. He has to convince them to come out. And that's going to take time, it definitely takes a fair amount of money to sort of hold their hand through this election cycle for the next 6 months. But if I'm Nikki Haley, what I'm doing is looking at whether or not those voters actually do come out in November. Because if the people that voted for me and wanted to send a message still come out and vote, that's actually not a bad platform to start a 2028 campaign for president, especially if she's talking to donors now. Don't know if it'll happen, but candidates always want to leave their options open, and I think this may be a sign that she's leaving that door open.
Okay, so leaving the door open. Let's talk about turnout, because here's what they're not discussing, and I think people really need to see what happened over the weekend. And just to credit Axios for this, they did retract that article. They did come back. You click on the link for that article now, you will actually receive this, which says update: Trump nixes Haley for VP. So they did retract that, just FYI. But yeah, I don't know where again, those two individuals they were talking about, I don't know where they got that information from. However, that being said, Donald Trump had a rally in New Jersey over the weekend, and the turnout should really concern everyone. This is a blue state. Yes, Chris Christie was the governor of New Jersey. He's a Republican, but it's similar to the sense like with Massachusetts, like my state, right? Like our previous governor was a Republican, Governor Charlie Baker, but Massachusetts is still a blue state. So it's similar, kind of like that in a sense. But the amount of people who came out to support Donald Trump at this rally in New Jersey should be alarming. Let's actually start off with the line of people from Simon Ataba. Simon Ataba was there on the ground. See it. Devoted Trump supporters line up outside Wildwood rally in New Jersey, probably sending the Democrats into panic mode ahead of 2024. Again, this is a blue state, ladies and gentlemen. So you see this? Now, this would not be surprising to me if this was South Carolina. That wouldn't be surprising to me. But it is surprising to me to see the line. That's not even the end of the line. All of those people in line for a Trump rally in New Jersey. In New Jersey, of all places. Simon Ataba, again, on the ground. I want you to see the size of the crowd, and then we're going to get into some of the statements that he made at this rally. He said, according to Fox News, this is one of the largest Trump rallies I've ever been to. So look at the size of the crowd.
This is going to show you. This is what a typical Trump rally, I would say, would look like, right? Full. You got a ton of people here that have been here, like I said, for hours. But if we walk behind and take you through where the press is, this is the astounding part here. This is one of the largest Trump rallies I've ever been to in the last 5 years or so. And you can see just thousands of people in the back here. And most of those is going to show you. This is
all those people in New Jersey to see Donald Trump. And I tried to tell people before, like those of us that live in blue states, people assume that there aren't a big amount of Trump supporters here. That's actually not true. Even if you look at the 2020, we do 2020 and 2016 election, even here in Massachusetts, I think you'd be surprised how many people actually voted for Donald Trump in Massachusetts, particularly the towns that are the older mill towns. Yeah, he does get a significant amount of support. Now, one of the things that he said at this rally was about what happened 4 years ago. So he's running on the economy. He's also speaking out in reference to Israel and Gaza. Of course, he's pro-Israel, just like Joe Biden is pro-Israel. But let's start with the economy first.
We are a nation that has quite simply lost its way. But we are not going to allow this horror to continue. Less than 4 years ago, we were a great nation, and we will soon be a great nation again. It was hardworking patriots like you who built this country, and it's hardworking patriots like you who are going to save our country. You're going to save our country. We are a nation.
So you see what he's doing? He's starting off with the economy. He's talking about how, basically the economy is in the toilet now compared to how it was when he was president. I think it's a smart move to run on the economy. That's a big one because we still have inflation. The prices are still high. You guys see it when you go to the store. You see it. So that's a big one to run on. So he's comparing Joe Biden's economy to his economy. And honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of people are feeling what he said. When it comes to Israel and Gaza, people need to be very concerned about what he says here. So let me bring this up as well. Again, both Biden and Trump are pro-Israel. Never forget that. I think some people believe that Donald Trump is, anti-war. I've said multiple times he is not anti-war. I don't know why people think this, but listen to the message that he has here in reference to Israel and Gaza.
When I'm president, we will not allow our colleges to be taken over by violent radicals. And if you come here from another country and try to bring jihadism or anti-Americanism or anti-Semitism to our campuses, we will immediately deport you. You'll be out of that school.
So you hear this? Let's hear it again. Hear it one more time.
When I'm president, we will not allow our colleges to be taken over by violent radicals. And if you come...
He said, we will not allow our colleges to be taken over by violent radicals. Now, how is that any different from the way that Joe Biden feels? Joe Biden may not actually use those same words, but Joe Biden, his response is to send in the police. Give the police more money. Neither one of them want the protest to happen. We cannot be confused, and you cannot think, well, Joe Biden is letting them have. Is he? He gave more money to the police. He's sending in the police. So he's not pro, these college protests either. Donald Trump is more overt with his language. He says, we're not going to let these radicals take over these college campuses. Joe Biden does it in a more covert way. When he gives a press conference about the campus protest, he says, you are allowed to protest, but you are not allowed to invoke violence, and you have to obey by the law. We are giving the police more money. The police are protecting us. That's the overt way of doing it, but they're both doing it. This part.
Come here from another country and try to bring jihadism or anti-Americanism or anti-Semitism to our campuses, we will immediately deport you. You'll be out of that school.
Listen who's protected. Think about that. If you come from another country and you try to bring this to our country and our campuses or what, okay, so he mentions anti-Semitism. He says if you're going to promote jihadism, etc., right? But isn't that identity politics? According to conservatives, isn't that being woke? Isn't that identity politics? And this is what I've said to people before. It's only identity politics when you're referring to certain groups of people. This was something, again, when we look back between that feud of Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and the whole Daily Wire beef that happened, that was something that was exposed about the Daily Wire, that they weren't really free speech. They were totally fine with all these things until it involved Israel. Then all of a sudden it's Candace Owens, you are not pro-Israel enough. Isn't that identity politics? Isn't that an identity? So the mask is off. The reality is, folks, at the end of the day, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, neither one of them are going to move in such a way that is going to benefit the Palestinian people. Neither one. But there is a candidate who will. I'm here to remind you, you don't have to vote for Trump or Biden. Stop letting people tell you that you do, because you don't. You have people running third-party and independent campaigns. You have Claudia de la Cruz. You have Jill Stein. You have Cornel West. You have RFK. But let's go ahead and snatch him out of that lineup because we know RFK is also pro-Israel. Actually, he's to the right of Joe Biden when it comes to this particular issue. So that leaves 3. You got to ask yourself at the end of the day, do you want to vote for genocide or do you want to vote against genocide? Everyone should ask themselves this question. Don't let people scare you. All these people coming out like, you're crazy. You're going to give us Donald Trump back. You're da 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 da. You have other options. And word on the street is, I just heard this recently. Someone told me, maybe we can talk about this a little bit Tuesday. It appears that now even people that are pro-Democrat, that are part of the Democratic Party, it appears that Kyle Kulinski, I guess, appeared on a Jill Stein event, and he's now endorsing Jill Stein. So Jill Stein's campaign is now getting the attention of a more liberal / progressive audience, which means that could actually give Jill Stein more support. Didn't think I'd see that happen. Didn't think I'd see that happen at all. But for those of you that are frustrated and you feel like there's nothing else you can do, and you're really angry, and you said you're just going to sit at home, instead of sitting at home, go out to the poll and vote for the anti-genocide candidates. That's what you can do. Don't be fooled. Mainstream media isn't talking about it as much yet, but as we get closer to November, you will start to see Jill Stein's campaign is gaining more and more support. And now that there's that endorsement from Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball, and I disagree with them on a lot of things. I mainly disagree with them on operating inside the Democratic Party. I don't agree with that. I disagree with them in some areas of foreign policy. But now that you have a channel as large as that has over 1 million subs, giving support for Jill Stein, this could really turn things around for a third party movement. And this is what we need. We need a strong third party movement in this country. Whether we win or lose, at least we fight. But don't get it twisted. Don't assume that if you just stay at home, it just is what it is. Instead of staying at home, maybe come out and vote for the anti-genocide candidates. That's all I ask of you. That's it. That's all I ask of you this year. Is that okay? That is it. That's all I'm saying, folks.